How can students detect early on early signs of stress, anxiety, and trauma?
There's a variety of symptoms that could come up for whether you're dealing with stress, anxiety, and trauma. One of the things is, of course, emotional signals, right? Right. You might be feeling some depression. You might notice that you're feeling really sad often. You might notice that you're having crying spells often. You might notice that emotionally you feel a little dysregulated. You don't feel like your normal self. You might also notice some somatic symptoms that you may have not had before, where you're having some gut imbalances, so maybe some pain in your stomach. You might notice some muscle tension because trauma stores itself in the body, and most of everything we go through stores itself in the body. So sometimes your body will alert you before your emotions start to recognize that, oh, something's wrong here, something's dysregulated. So are you getting frequent headaches? Do you find your heart racing all the time, especially for people who struggle with stress and anxiety? Triggers. That's very common when dealing with trauma. So you might notice, let's say, you're having memories of a traumatic event, or you are in a space where you notice an interaction with someone, or maybe turning on the news, or some sort of circumstance triggers you, which sends you into like a fight flight mode. You might also notice whether, like I said, just emotionally, what's happening for you on an emotional level, on a physical level. Are you going through stages of hypervigilance where everywhere you go, you're concerned that something bad is going to happen? Now you're being vigilant everywhere you go. Also noticing like hyperarousal versus hypoarousal, right? Where you're going between these moments of deep sadness, and then sometimes you're going through elation and excitement. Fear and worry. So those are some different ways it can manifest. In the body, both physically as well as emotionally.
So when you're stressed or anxious, before it was because maybe there was a bear and we had to run. So what would end up happening is that, your body, it would shut down all functions in the belly. We're not doing digestion right now. We got to go. So typically you'll start feeling pains in your stomach so you can evacuate what's in your bowels so you can be lighter so you can go. So a lot of times now we experience stress, but it's virtual, it's coming through a computer, but you still might have that same reaction in the gut. So a lot of people experience gut acid reflux, their stomach, they feel butterflies or whatever. So their gut really, some people might say it's the second brain. So experiencing any sort of issues in that way. Tying from the gut, nutrition, any change. So if you're eating more, eating less. If you see any rapid weight gain or rapid weight loss, any changes to your sleep, the heart palpitations, anything related to, oh, my heart, and with that, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, any increase in drug or alcohol usage, and or you start using drugs and alcohol. So one of those, and then suicidal and homicidal ideations. Um, and I think that's about it. Headaches, migraines, all of these sorts of things. So yeah.
In addition to all of that you might be experiencing, understanding what are the other sources of trauma that you may experience, right? Aside from just like the virtual learning and the stress you experience, but like turn on your TV, what's been going on in the political climate the last few years, right? What does that mean for you? How do you internalize that? Do those things start to cause some of the things that were mentioned by Chantel and Mina, right? So also understanding, like, again, when you're feeling those things, are there other things happening externally that are exacerbating that, right? Like, what does that mean for you, and what do you do to kind of avoid some of those things too, right? So I will also just add in, from an external perspective, like, what are these other things that can contribute to your trauma?